Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the CG Pro live stream. Welcome, welcome. Great to see you all here. I'm going to do a little quick overview of what tonight is all about. So I'm going to introduce these two in just a second. Daniel and Franco, our amazing instructors, have joined us tonight. But let me just give you a quick overview of what we're going to be going through. So Unreal Engine for Filmmakers. This is an info session about using Unreal Engine in filmmaking and for some other purposes as well. So a quick overview of tonight. We're going to be doing some quick intros in a second. We'll be doing a demo talking about using Unreal Engine for film and also a case study. Daniel recently made an awesome world for NAB and is going to be talking through how he made that. We'll then lead into a little bit of a discussion about Unreal Engine, the industry. We'll do a short presentation about a course that we have coming up, Unreal Engine for Filmmakers, obviously. And then we'll do some Q&A. So stick around for the Q&A at the end. But please do ask questions as we go. We welcome questions. This is a live interactive session. This is real. This is not a recording. Yes, you can ask questions. Sometimes people aren't sure about that. So with that said, my name's Edd Dawson Taylor. I'm a CG supervisor, visual effects artist, been in the industry for a while. Been very lucky to work on some cool projects. Jurassic World, Jungle Book, Lion King. I was the virtual art department lead on Lion King, and 2.5 years ago we started CG Pro, the school, and I am a co-founder and head of school at CG Pro. I would like to now introduce Franco. Franco, great to have you on tonight.
Hi, thank you, Ed. Well, I'm Franco, as Edward said. I've been working within the industry for around 8 years now. And I started 3D modeling 8 years ago. And then time went by. I learned a couple things more. I went through VFX in the industry, in the movie industry, to do some chroma keying and tracking and whatnot. And then a couple of years ago, my mentor brought in Unreal. He told me it was real time. He told me it was free. I did not believe him, and he showed me, and it was free and it was real time. So here we are. I've been working for CG Pro for around, I think, 4 or 5 rounds of the Connectors program, and I also work for Epic Games in the Fellowship program. So that's me.
Awesome. Franco, thank you very much. Daniel, I will also queue up your slide so you're not looking like Franco.
Yeah. Like Ed said, I'm Daniel, and I'm the other instructor for the course, mainly for the environments, lighting, and optimization weeks. But I've been using Unreal for almost 5 years now. Started in games, going to game school, but then I transitioned over to filmmaking as both a tech artist and actual working in virtual production on set. But up until recently, I was working at Braun Digital as a lighting artist in Unreal Engine, and have been working with CG Pro on the last, well, I guess this would be my 3rd round, and it's been amazing so far. And I've actually been working with Franco as a teaching assistant / technical artist on the Unreal Fellowships for the last 2 world building classes.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, pleasure to have you guys on tonight. Thanks for your time. I appreciate you taking time out of your evening to share your knowledge with the world. And so we're now going to lead in to the demo section. We're going to start talking a little bit about Unreal Engine, mainly leaning towards film and filmmaking. And I should say before we do that, though, that Unreal Engine is very applicable to many other industries as well. It's fast becoming a tool that's used by a number of different industries. It's obviously, or maybe not at this point, started as a game engine, and people using it to make games. And that's now expanding into independent people being able to make games with more ease. The introduction of Unreal Engine for Fortnite and things that we might mention a little bit later on. That is very exciting, but we're all here to mainly talk about its use in film. But just it's worth knowing that that's where it does come from. It comes from the games industry, and was because of its ease of use and its I guess low barriers to entry. It's relatively easy to learn. Having a number of us, all of us here on this call, having learned other software and things like Maya that the industry's used for a long time, they can take a long time to learn, a couple of years to start to become proficient in those tools. So it's worth knowing that Unreal Engine's easier, and for that, I think that's part of the reason why it's become popular in the film world. People in all kinds of different roles using Unreal Engine in the film world, whether they're on the box as artists or now more and more directors of photography, directors using it in their process. So it's changing. It's changing a lot what it's being used for, and it's expanded out into many other industries as well as games and film. We're seeing it being used in simulation and automotive, and almost every industry has some version of visualizing what they do, whether it's a product they make or an experience that they create. Using Unreal for simulation is great, and a lot of people are moving back and forth between those different industries as well. Once you've learned this skill set, it's extremely useful across different industries. So that's a really good thing, I think, to know, because bouncing between these industries, not only is there more opportunity, but there's also things to learn from those other industries. So with that said, I want to bring in the culprit itself. I'm going to share my screen again. And no, that's not it. Okay. Let me unshare my screen for a second, and I will share it again in the hope that this time it brings back Unreal Engine. Okay, here we go. So here's an Unreal scene. This is the moon. There's one of the cool things about Unreal Engine is it's very, very powerful. It's really good at.
Ed, you're not sharing your screen.
Oh, not sharing the screen.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for letting me know. That happens. All right. How about that? That's the moon, right?
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, we see it.
Awesome. So Unreal Engine, super powerful tool. It's really, really capable of opening and displaying very large worlds. And this is about 150 square kilometers of the moon surface that we've got in Unreal Engine here. It's tons of geometry, and Unreal Engine is very, very capable of displaying all of that geometry. It can hold worlds even bigger than that. It could hold entire planets at real scale, partly due to its power in being able to represent very large numbers, which not all 3D software is very good at. But anyway, starting in a brand new, fresh scene, you would not have a moon in there. You would have nothing, in fact. So what we're looking through here is the viewport. For anyone that's new to Unreal Engine, we're looking through the viewport, which is the kind of the window into the world. I'm going to create a new folder here for this demonstration. And I'm creating this down in this content browser below. So the viewport is the window into our world. The content browser down here, this is a place where you can gather assets. It's like a collection of ingredients, if you like. Like if you're making a meal and the meal was in the viewport, the content browser at the bottom is your pantry full of ingredients. And once you've collected all of the right ingredients, you can make the right meal. So if we're making a moon, we'd be collecting all sorts of things that are relevant to that: moon rocks and lunar surface data and textures that are relevant to the moon. But what we would normally start off with is an empty world. And if I can right click in my content browser here, create a new level, this now becomes a new world. A level is a container for your environment. Think of it in that way. We're in a project here, so this whole interface is showing us our project, which could be your entire movie. But within your movie, you might have different scenes. And if you think of this like the theater, in the theater, you would wheel on a scene, a set, if you like, open the curtains, create some drama, and then you close the curtains again, wheel that set off, and then wheel another one on. And in that sense, within our projects, we can do exactly the same thing. So I'm in the moon world right now, but I can double click on my new level that I created, and I'm going to be totally in the dark. And a really good thing to start with when you create a new, brand new world, and it's completely black like this is to start making some stuff and putting it into your world. Because we can't see anything, because in this panel here, the outliner on the top right, this has a list of everything that's in our world. So think of this as like the manifest of your world, the things that are in your world in list form. This is it visually, and this is it in list form. So as you can see, nothing here, nothing for sale. And if I click on this window menu at the top here, and I scroll down to my ENV light mixer, my environment light mixer, pop this open, you'll see that we have a bunch of buttons here. So we have create, and then all of these different kinds of lights. This is a really nice, quick way to start creating your world. And if I click on all of these buttons, okay, click on all those buttons, and then finally the clouds, and I close this window again, you'll now see that we have 5 things in our outliner, and we also have a visual world to look at. And there's some clouds, there's some sky, there's some atmosphere and haze, and then there's this scary blue void underneath us. So we can start by doing that, and that gives us a good basis, a bit more than the kind of black scene that we were in just now. And if we fly around it, we're not going to tell, we're not going to see very much because there's no ground. But I can now do another thing. If I go to the top left up here, in Unreal, there's a number of different modes, and the type of work that you're going to be doing is often driven by a mode. In general, you're going to be in this select mode, which allows you to select things, obviously. But other than that, it allows you to be able to do the regular kind of work, doing layout, creating scenes, creating worlds, doing the normal things that you would do to build an environment and start doing things in it. I'm going to drop into the landscape mode. So I'm going to click on landscape. And then what this will do is bring up a kind of template for the landscape that I want to create. So I want to create a floor in my world. If I click on that, by default, I'm going to get this landscape. And there's a whole bunch of confusing numbers over here that do mean some things, but these are basically the way that you can change the size, the number of components, changes the size of the landscape that you're about to create. So let's do something that's like 20 by 20, and this is by default. This is going to give us a resolution that gives us basically one dot per meter. So that much resolution on the ground, that much data. You don't get sub-meter resolution doing it this way, but it's possible to do. But this landscape is essentially a tool with which we can, now if we hit create, it's going to create us a floor. So now we have a floor and a sky. One useful thing to know about in the viewport is we have this little speed control up here, and the speed control with this little camera icon changes the speed with which we can fly around the world. And if anybody doesn't know how to fly around the world, it follows the game controls, which typically you would use on a PC game. So I'm going to put my keyboard up there. It's going to be the W, A, S, and D keys in the top left-hand side of the keyboard. W is forwards, S is back, A and D kind of strafe to the left and right, or track left and right if you're a filmmaker. So now we have a checkered patterned floor, a nice sky with some clouds in it. And because we're in landscape mode, what we can now do, if we're in sculpt mode, is you can move your cursor around in the world. You'll see that little blue circle. That's our little sculpt brush. So what we can now do, if I just change the brush size, this is in world units, so we go up to a bigger brush. World units, by the way, are in centimeters. So everything that's in numerical form, like this location information down here, is centimeters. And most things relate to centimeters in the engine. So my brush size being, say, 2500, that is 2500 centimeters. Okay, so if I now have my brush, I can sculpt with this brush just by painting into the environment. And now I have a little landscape forming. So as you can see, with a few clicks, you can sculpt away. Now there is a way to bring in a landscape from real height data, and the moon example I showed you just now was that. So we had a real moon data, but this is just me kind of sculpting around and creating some little bit of detail here, so we can create ourselves a little shot down here. We have various other brushes like smooth, if I've got peaks that are too big, or so you can shape your landscape nicely and drop down here into this little valley we made. And another brush that I like at this point is this little noise brush here. If we click on the noise brush and increase our brush size, and I click over here, then I get a, whoa, crazy result. Way too much intensity. So I'm going to dial my tool strength here right down to 0.08. Still far too much. So let's go to 0.02. And all I want to do is just kind of kiss in a little bit of detail onto that surface there. So you can kind of do it in stages, add some kind of big soft sculpty detail, and then go in and just kiss in a little bit of extra detail, just adds a little bit of extra realism. So now we've got the floor, we have the sky, and we have ourselves a little world with just really a few clicks. What we can do from this point, if we go back to select mode, is we can click on the landscape here. And one thing that's pretty cool to be able to do is start placing more detail in here. We have access to Quixel Bridge at the top here, which if I am hopefully signed into, I can start using. But within Quixel Bridge, you've got access to, what is it now, nearly 14,000 assets. And if we click into the 3D assets section, you can see that you've got tons of now architectural assets. There's food. There's all sorts of cool stuff from nature, like rocks and trees, and there's some really, really nice stuff in here. There's also surfaces. So if we wanted to create some grass, then we could jump in here. This is an overly simplistic way of building a world, but apparently I'm not signed in. So let me see if I've got anything already in my project. I can use that. Surfaces. All right. Well, just for the sake of time, what you would do if you were signed in is you would grab this model, you would download it, and then you can export it in or with many models, you can just drag them straight into your environment here. Because I have, let me see, some damaged concrete. See if this one works. So with the landscape here, there's a special slot for landscape. Let me just drop it in there. It's probably going to be, if I drop this one in and it's concrete, it's probably going to look kind of rocky. But if I'm down on the surface here, now I've got some nice texture, and then really it's just off to the races from there. You can start detailing this in. If I was making a kind of inhospitable environment, then I would maybe start from something like this, but you can easily start with grass or other kinds of materials as well. So I did want to see if we have any questions. What are some of the best practices when working on an Unreal Engine project with other artists remotely to keep them in sync? It's a very good question. Either of you guys want to take this one on?
Sure. So obviously, like having some sort of version control really helps. And Unreal Engine, especially in Unreal 5, it has new things where you can have multiple people working on, say, the same level all at once, but it has new tools inside that make it a lot easier to do so without causing conflicts, such as this thing called one file per actor, right? So obviously with that, one of the biggest things is making sure that once you are going to touch something, is to make sure that it's easy for someone else to see that you've either had it checked out. In other words, you own it for the time being and it's locked to other people, right? So communicating that, hey, I'm going to be touching this today. Please make sure it's, say, I'm able to access it, right? And then on top of that, is as soon as you get it, you lock it to other people, right? And then you submit it once it's done. And the biggest thing is communicating your changes, right? And what type of change that you made, right? So like say if you were working on the environment, you'd want to specify what level and what type of work you did. So as an example, hashtag environment, added landscape, right? Just as that Ed did here, right? And then as soon as you're done with that task or making those changes, you submit it, right? And this allows people to see it not only inside of, say, Perforce, as you mentioned, but it also allows people to have a clear history of all the changes that are made. And that allows you, say something goes wrong, right, in one of the submissions where your project breaks, you're able to track it down to where it broke, but also to a point and know exactly what happened on each step. So you can be like, all right, we lost a week's worth of work, but we can go all the way back to when, say, Franco added the animations because he clearly specified that he added animations to this level at this point. And then the next day it broke, right?
Yeah, it's a good, a really good point that Daniel's making there, that essentially without a revision control system, it's very hard to keep people in sync. It's not that it's impossible, but there's tons of ways that you can clobber each other. You're not in the same situation where you've got like a Maya scene or a nuke script and you're just doing some work and then throwing it to the other person. They do some work, they throw it back. These projects are made of hundreds or thousands of files. So having multiple people in there, you really kind of need some sort of system like that. And to this point, Perforce has been the favorite. It's free up to 5 people. So I'd recommend it for small teams. It is the best integrated revision control system. There are some interesting things happening on that front. If anyone's paid attention to Unreal Engine for Fortnite, you'll notice that Epic have their own revision control system in Unreal Engine for Fortnite. It's not an Unreal Engine yet. And I say yet, being a giant hint to Epic. Could you please add it to the other one? But you can see where maybe that's going. I don't know anything any better than any of you do, but you need some sort of revision control system if you're going to do it robustly, reliably. Otherwise, you're going to be in this kind of nightmare of file swapping, and it's really, really, really difficult. Great question. So if there's no more questions at this point, I think this would be a great moment to jump over to your section, Daniel. Daniel is going to share a little bit about how he made the world, which we just used at NAB, and we just did a demonstration. We were at NAB. We'll talk about that again in a second. But NAB is a big broadcast event. It's expanded out to virtual production heavily. There was tons of virtual production stuff going on there, including this one thing, which was a truck with a LED volume on the back of it. Crazy, amazing invention. You can drive a volume up to your soundstage or wherever you want to do virtual production and have a volume, 24-foot square volume essentially on the back of a truck, which is quite big actually. You can put a car in it. They had a turntable for a car in there. We're doing car process stuff, a train shoot that looked just as good as a permanent fixed LED volume. So we were asked to build a set for this environment. Daniel did a lot of the work on that. So Daniel, let me just share your screen.
All right.
Okay.
So what we have here is actually my starting point. So what typically happens is that when you have a client, in this case, Magic Box, right? They give you sort of a specific look that they want, right? In this case, it was, I believe, they wanted sort of a cyberpunky scene. And this asset pack, which is something we got off of this thing called the Epic Games Marketplace, which not only has thousands of assets available, but entire environments, basically. And this was actually the scene that they really liked. However, there was a lot of things that we needed to do in order to really make it kind of work on the wall and not feel super gamey. One of the big things was that, as you can see, we had to add a couple of our advertisements on here for not only this course, but for Magic Box as well as Unreal Engine. But aside from that, there are a lot of things wrong with it, such as the grounds. I was a little too heavy with the lighting. And also this area over here, right? One of our goals was that we needed to make it sort of have an even amount of interest on each side to really fully maximize the volume. So one of the biggest tasks here was actually building out this side to actually have a bit more information going on and overall bring the scene together. Now, one of the things that I had to keep in mind while doing this was that it had to run efficiently. Most volumes, they have a minimum frame rate. Most of the time it's 60 or 120 FPS, and you can't go below that. And so one of the biggest tasks was keeping quality while also meeting the optimization mark. And one of the big things was definitely lighting, as well as with also the amount of assets in here. Now, I'm going to transition over to the scene that has been fully finished and was submitted for use. So, as you could probably tell, that a lot has been done to the scene in order to kind of spice it up. But one of the most important things is, and one of the newest things, is that there is absolutely no lights in the scene. This is completely lit through materials, which are surfaces that give us back information using either textures or different math that we give it in order to render a certain way. So in this case, there's this thing called an emissive surface, which is emitting light. And that allowed me to get pretty much free illumination, right? And with that, I was able to light this entire scene. Now, on top of that, as you can see here, that I was able to fill out the other side of where there used to be a train station. Now I have another level of the street with a lot more detail, a lot more lived-in feel, a lot more grunge to the overall city. And this was able to be done not only with Megascans, which will kind of break down in a bit of how you would want to add detail, but I went through this in steps. So first, it was all about getting optimization running. The scene wasn't running that well at the time. And the first thing I wanted to do was utilize Unreal's new dynamic triangle system, or nanite, which allows us to virtualize all geometry and get an insane amount of polygons for cheap. Now I'm going to just transition over to what nanite would look like underneath the hood. And one of the biggest benefits is that it will not only digitize, but it will dynamically change the amount of detail on the mesh depending on how close you got to it. So this allowed me to actually have a lot more geometry without having to sacrifice frame rate or have to worry about too much about camera angles. So I was able to get a lot of detail out.
Interesting question just come in that's related to that is what are some of the common mistakes or hiccups that beginners make you think that could be helped or optimized either in workflow or being a part of the workflow?
So the biggest thing is not treating it like a game engine, right? The biggest thing is that your concern should be real time, right? And also knowing exactly what your deliverables need to be. Understanding how, say, dark, like what's the darkest point that you can have it to, right? Typically, when you have LED walls and brightness is on it, there's less wiggle room for darkness, right? You're going to get a lot more black clipping, right? So you have to, especially with illumination, is understand that you can't have it, one, being super dark, and two, right, is the amount of information that needs to be rendered all at once and is going to be presented and how fast that's going to run, right? So the biggest mistake is tossing out those factors and also not understanding that you need to be able to render it in real time for it to go onto a wall. A big mistake my company made when I was working in virtual production is that we told our artists that frame rate didn't matter. And when we got to set, every scene was running at 9 frames per second at most, like most were running at 2. And we had to have them on the wall in a week, and they had to be a minimum of 24 frames. So there was a lot of problems with that because it meant that we had to make a lot of artistic sacrifices in order for it to run right? Lighting looked great, but it was lighting that was the problem. The scene looked great, but it was the geometry that was the problem, right? So we had to take a huge chunk of out of our scenes, and overall, it completely botched the project, in my opinion. Like, it turned out okay, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. So definitely keep those things in mind, as well as focusing on what really matters. You don't, in this case, the world is 360 degrees, right? But understanding where what your shooting angles are and communicating with the director of photography, that's very important because you want to understand what's your shooting locations, right? So doing some proper scouting in order to understand where you're shooting in the environment, because what that will allow you to do is focus detail on where you're going to be shooting. And this point, where my character is right now, we kind of decided that sort of over here in this general vicinity would be the main shooting location. So a lot of detail was focused onto this strip in order to sort of make it feel much more alive, right? That included making sure that areas that we're going to be looking at will be blocked off, because before this was here, it was completely black. And as well as making sure that, reflections are going to look good in this case. That's why the wall side over there was done. But
I can just underscore that quickly here by just showing a screenshot of it in the truck with the location you can see in the back there. You can see that street position that we were in, and the size of it. It's not huge, but looking through the camera, which I don't have a screenshot of, unfortunately, gives you a real feel of being there. We also have these practical lanterns you can see at the top here. These lanterns are real. They're actually strung along the ceiling inside the truck. And before we got into the truck, we scanned them with a phone app very quickly and did a quick phone scan of those, exported the FBX, loaded it into the truck, emailed it or whatever to the guy in the volume control in the truck, and he put them in the scene. And then within minutes from a phone, these practical props were in the back. these digital ones, you can see this one at the top right here. I feel like my cursor is going a little nuts, but anyway, this one at the top right is a virtual one. This is a practical one. So we were able to get both of them in and kind of really sell that sense of the illusion. So you can see the same thing for real and virtually. It really helps kind of tie that together.
Yeah.
Cool. What were a couple of things that you you had to do to add to the scene, to add to the realism?
Yeah. So the first thing is adding breakup to what existed already. So say in this case, I'll use the road as an example. So the road, before I touched it, obviously, if you guys remember, it was a little bit more specular. And what ended up happening, and let me just turn this off. This one off here. That might be for the bottom. Let me actually do it for the top. So let me just turn that off. So this is what it looks like minus the change in material on the ground. But one of the biggest things that I wanted to do was use these things called decals, which are essentially stickers, right? And it's a very quick way of being able to add extra detail to your meshes without going out of engine, right? And you can see actually, and I'll just use the ground as an example, just how much this changed. And adding in just these things right here, these little patches, these are basically little bits of detail. Let me actually move a bigger one off to the side so you can see it. One sec here. Let me actually just grab this. So these are basically stickers that are projected onto the ground. And what I did is I went on to the Quixel Bridge. I'm not sure if you guys see that. Okay, yeah, you do. Yep. And I went into the decal section, which has a whole bunch of stickers onto it. And you can see there's also graffiti, which is another thing I used. And I was able to basically stamp them into the ground and add a whole bunch of breakup. And actually, one thing that was really useful as well was that I was able to make a decal for, say, puddles, right? And I was able to, and I'm just using this as the best example here, is that if you set it up right, you can actually be able to scale, say in this case, I wanted to add details so that I could scale up how many puddles there are or how big they are in this example, so that I have a bit more control about how much rain or bumps are in here, right? And that was just the road in this case. But I also did the same for the walls, right? So if we look at the side here, I added a whole bunch of graffiti to the sides just to break it up a bit, and you can probably see a little bit of repetition in here with a couple of the decals, right? But these are just stickers that I slammed against it, and it really added sort of the like kind of very I guess urban feel, or like the slum feel to it.
Grungy.
Yes, grunge. And like with these two combined, as well as the leaks that I added to the buildings, right? I was able to actually get a lot out of it, right? Without having to, go and take it out of engine, paint it, and then bring it in, and then looked at it, and then be like, okay, now I got to bring it back, right? I was able to just add it on top of things to really give it so much more life to it. And on the other thing is that if I just press play, I even brought in some of our student work, where I made billboards basically, where like I even added ones where you can get pixels on it, right? So that when it was in the volume, it would just play, and we got a sense of very um, dynamic ads basically. And you can actually see there's actually a couple of them playing off in the distance, as well as on a couple of these boards from student work. But it allowed me to sort of get this new dynamic feel to it. And you can even see that these assets that were here before, they actually had a completely different texture on it. And what you can do is that even with these, you can export pre-existing meshes out, retexture them, and bring them back. And that allowed me to actually add in some very cool extra layers onto these signs and really customize them. And then even making signs with just text, and in Blender just wrote out text, made emissive signs, and brought them in. And it really helped layering it, or even taking the empty spots inside of these buildings, and just literally adding cardboard to the top of it to block it out. Because one thing with slums is that maybe there's empty places that have been closed down, and really wanted to get rid of these empty details and add in some believability to it. Even just layering it behind glass with just a chain fence and some graffiti, it really adds a lot to it. And it's all about just layering these details on top of each other. Whether it's starting with the building and adding in some graffiti and some garbage bags around it, like I did it over here, where I added some garbage bags in between, as well as some overall grunge to the building, and some graffiti on top of it, just to kind of really tie things and get rid of all this negative space inside of it.
Really cool.
Yeah,
yeah, it's you're taking something that looked like it belonged in a game engine and added a bunch of detail, and now it's starting to look like it belongs in a movie, which is really cool. Thanks for explaining the process behind that. And we have any more questions from everybody, please feel free to pitch them in the chat. We will get to them. I just want to now transition to just briefly talking a little bit about the industry. So I want to use this as a jumping off point to start talking about where does this go? Where can we expect to end up if we have these skills? And that this is an ever-changing landscape. But I have a slide here just to kind of talk about this for a second, which is within film, at least, and this is not to mention all the other places that you could go work for: NASA, car companies, architectural firms, all sorts of different things you can do with this. But within film, we have a lot of things within visualization, previs, people making rough versions of movies before they make the final, lots and lots of mocap going on out there, performance capture, people doing things in green screens, people doing things on LED walls. you guys teach a lot of people through this program and also through Epic. Franco, what are some of the common roles that you see people going on to work in once they've learned how Unreal Engine works?
Well, the usual. I mean, what we usually did back in Epic with the storytelling, which is a very similar program to the connectors. What we're doing here, the Filmmakers one, is people end up usually going into environment design more than animation. Animation right now in Unreal Engine is switching gears to becoming a little bit better and more fluid. As of right now, at least I personally think that it's a long way off from what it needs to be to compete with DCC animation as Maya or Blender. It lacks the tools and it lacks the flexibility and the optimization yet. So I don't see many people jumping outside from what we teach them into animation. What I do see is people jumping into environment design because it's pretty much what Unreal excels at. It's absolutely amazing what it can do in a very short amount of time with super insane quality regarding lighting, and what you see is what you get in the engine. Um, and I see a lot of people also jumping into live broadcast events and product visualization. Archivist is obviously a huge thing side also of Unreal Engine, but mostly I think those four things is essentially where I get feedback from LinkedIn, where people show up what they're doing, and then obviously replicating more shorts. But again, we're leaning on they do something similar to what we teach them in both Epic and CG Pro, where they create a short with either the animations they get or custom animations made but outside the engine. As of right now, content rig is great, needs a lot of work.
Right. Yeah, but they're starting to get some of the tools that we're familiar with in other programs, like finally we've got constraints, sort of.
Yeah, they don't work, but yeah, we got
Okay,
them.
but they're there. Yeah, it's the first step, right? Yeah, and advancements in the sequencer, being able to bake animation between control rig and back to clips, and yeah, lots of cool things. There are some things in there that we don't have in other programs, but yeah, it's still graduating. So yeah, lots and lots of environment work, lots of virtual art department work, lots of world building. That's the kind of the mainstay, whether it's in film or outside. I have another diagram which I keep refining over time to try and explain the world of virtual production, starting from the kind of production company near the top here. My pointer's still freaking out. Look at that. Anyway, all the roles kind of stretching down here towards the camera department, lighting department, animation department, the volume control or brain bar if you must, virtual art department, and mocap and tracking department, and then underneath that, all of these roles, all of these at least tasks that need to get done. So there's plenty of things within the VAD, such as asset development, layout, some of the things that Franco was describing as being essentially often a very large department, the people that are making all of the things in the world. There's a lot of technical roles if you move over to the volume control, I'm going to call it. Slightly more popular name. Nobody likes calling it the brain bar. It just stuck a few years ago and can't get rid of it. But yeah, lots of pipeline TDs, operators, people wrangling these sets that we've just been looking at onto stage. So lots of roles in the technical department, more roles in the artistic and VAD department. And yeah, I was like to share that one. So I want to take a second now and just, as I said at the beginning, we were going to have a short presentation about the course that we run. So Unreal for Filmmakers is a class that we've been teaching at CG Pro for just over 2 years. It was inspired a lot by the Unreal Fellowship. We were the first people in the world to teach it, and we've continued to do it. We've now done it 15 times since we started doing it, improving it every time. CG Pro is a as this says, online independent training center. What does that mean? We're very agile, and we really believe in being on the cutting edge, at least as much as production dictates. So everything that we teach is really production driven, teaching practical skills that people actually use. We focus in the film, broadcast, games areas. We're also teaching people in simulation. We do private training as well, and we just taught NASA and Metex, their big contractor. So some very exciting stuff that you can do with these skills. We teach public classes. We have a thriving community of graduates, people that are awesome and go out and do amazing things. Go working on the new Star Wars movies, work at ILM and Digital Domain, and some really cool success stories that we've had coming out of the school. We also help as much as we can people going to get those opportunities, and we have a bit of a placement department. We do a little consulting, but the course itself, Unreal for Filmmakers, is taught by myself, Daniel, and Franco. It all comes from the fellowships from movies like The Lion King, Jungle Book. All of that knowledge is coming through from those places through this program. We love it. We care about it a lot, and we continue to improve it every time. It is blessed by Epic through what they call the Connectors program. And the Connectors program really came from Epic doing the fellowship and wanting to get that out to more people. So they do it through training centers such as us. And I'm not sure if we have time to show the latest cohort sizzle reel, but let me see if we do at the end. But our next start date is May the 7th. We're open for enrollment. We have a few spaces left, and I just want to take a second to just talk a little bit about what you can expect from the program. So obviously it's called Unreal Engine for Filmmakers, the Connectors program. It's 8 weeks long. It's certificate. You get a certificate, is what I should say. At the end of it, it's a certificate that's issued by us, but it is backed by Epic, as we are an authorized training center and a connector authorized training center. There's not too many of those in the world, but we are one of them. We teach online. We teach live, as opposed to through video, so you can follow along. You can ask questions through the teaching. We have live labs at the end of the teaching, so you can go a bit more in depth. And then we have labs during the week, so you can ask even more depth, share your project. I can see people in the chat there who are in the class. Hello, and thank you for being here. I know people who doing the class still come back and work with us and do all sorts of cool stuff. It's really thriving community, which we really encourage. But yeah, we have mentoring from ourselves. We also bring in guests from the industry. We get really awesome guests at the top of their game. We really focus on attracting top talent to be able to support these classes from the highest level possible. We have a forum as well, so if you can ask questions offline. Franco's mission in life is to answer them as fast as he possibly can, and I don't know how he does it, but yeah, these guys have amazing knowledge, and they really care, and they do a tremendous amount to support the people going through the program. It's twice a week live, Sundays 8:30 a.m. Pacific, and then Wednesday evenings is the lab. So there's 2 live sessions during the week. We also bring in guests in additional slots, and we have the forum. As I said, it's project based. You can build a great short film. If I have any time at the end, I will try and show our last sizzle, but you can also see it on our website at the address below, becomecgpro.com. So yeah, everybody comes out with a short film. 1 to 2 minutes is what we recommend. Sometimes people break the rules and make longer ones, but that's a sort of feasible amount for somebody who's got a job. And we we organize this course so that you can still do it whilst you're doing what you already do, which many people have a job or two jobs or a job and a family, and it's manageable around that. You do have to push yourself like anything that you want to get good at, but it's manageable. We record everything. You can keep them forever as long as the internet is there, and you get access to our great instructors, to our industry guests, and to our bustling community of people who are really passionate about this subject. And it's a very alive place, full of enthusiastic people and very supportive people. People met each other in the program. They've gone to work with each other. They've started companies. They've become friends. It's a pretty cool place. I'm obviously incredibly biased, but I think it's cool. And the price for all of that, for 8 weeks, 70 hours of instruction, is just under 4,000 US. So if you're interested, please get in touch with us. We love meeting new people who are passionate about Unreal Engine and want to take it to the next level. And I would love to hear from you. And if you choose to work with us, then that would be fantastic. We're all three of us are instructors in this class. So that leads on to the Q&A section. So did you guys, either of you guys, have anything to add before I go to the Q&A about the program itself?
Yeah, for me, real quick, what can they expect from this? You can expect to get out of this very comprehensive first steps into Unreal Engine. And what is super cool for me from this program is that at the end of it, you will get a short sequence that you created yourself. And every step of the way, right? There's nobody else, or there should be nobody else helping you on this, which means that you will have to learn everything. You will have to learn lighting, environment, animation, characters, textures, materials, which is super, super cool because it will give you the knowledge. Even if you don't end up being an Unreal artist, it will give you the knowledge to communicate to Unreal artists in a better way, right? With the actual technical language of what you're doing or what you need to be done.
Thanks, Franco. Yeah, there's a great amount of resource that goes into this. We were, as I said, we were the first to do this, and we've done it 15 times, which I believe is more than anyone else in the world has run a program like this. And every time, all three of us and the team sit down and we figure out what was great, what could we improve, what is new in Unreal Engine, and what do we have to catch up on, as they change it every round. Pretty much there's a new version of Unreal. And we're careful what we put in, though. We don't just put in the latest new fancy shiny object. We as we were talking about constraints, we're not teaching that yet because it's not quite ready. People are not really using it in production. We try and drive it from things which are at the right stage of their life in Unreal Engine, and we're careful about that. Daniel, anything else from you?
Yeah. Another thing that is great to come in here for is that keeping a very open mind in the sense of like try and forget, if you're from a traditional film background, try and forget some of the stuff that you learned there, because now you have, like I said earlier, think about it like a game, and but at the same time know that things transfer over. Right? Don't think about it as a completely separate entity. If you've worked in After Effects, or you've worked in Maya, or just on a film set, is that those skills can apply. It's just you have to think about them in a different context, right? The other thing is that, especially going through this, I highly recommend not using plugins, from other things. If you've already got your eyes on Ultra Dynamic Sky, I sincerely plead with you to just focus on learning the components, right? That's the biggest thing here. It's all about learning how to do it right. And sometimes these things, they make things easy, but it doesn't necessarily make it allow you to fully understand what you're tweaking. And that's why we insist on on that. I mean, you do you, but it will our goal is just to make sure that you can confidently go from this project to another. And honestly, it's okay if it's not as good as you would hope at the end. The most important thing is being, I'm going to do this in the next one I do, right? This is what I did wrong. I want to do this to fix it. This is how I would approach it. It's all about opening doors for you guys, not closing them.
It's a great point, and what Daniel's saying there is bang on about learning the fundamentals. We all see all the new flashy AI blah de blah that's coming out, and it's all great, but there is no shortcut to learning the fundamentals of any art form, really. Yes, those tools are all amazing, and we're all going to be using them, and we'll all be worshipping our robot overlords very soon, I'm sure. But learning the fundamentals of art, the fundamentals of design, the fundamentals of world building, there's no shortcut to that. Even if you make something with an auto procedural generated AI driven widget that makes everything for you in a button, like our clients have been asking us for forever, and now it's here. You need to manipulate it in a certain way. You need to judge whether it's good or not. And learning the foundations and the fundamentals of these workflows is the biggest asset that you can have. Learning, sure, the new techniques, fantastic, but learn the foundations. And what Daniel was saying about the Ultra Dynamic Sky, which is an amazing plugin, definitely recommend it for sure. It's great. But if you're learning, try and learn what it's made of. If you're learning, you should understand how you could make one yourself, or what's underneath it. It comes with a whole load of things that it kind of hides from you, and it's very valuable to know about those things and learn the building blocks. If you want to learn how to build a house, learn how a brick's made, and you'll understand the concept of how to make a good image if you understand the fundamentals of composition. And those things are things we teach in this class. It's not just Unreal Engine. It's the Trojan horse to this program, is how to make good imagery, not just how to click buttons in Unreal Engine. And it's something which we really, really care about. Any more questions coming through here? So I guess as we're stepping into the Q&A, someone's saying, hey, I'm planning to do content on Twitch and YouTube using mocap. Do you have any advice? Good question.
Sorry, Ed.
No, go ahead.
Now, do you mean like a live stream type of setup, or?
I'm guessing, yeah.
Yeah. So if it's live stream, then what you would want is a way of, like, say if you're using Rococo as an example, is that what you would want is to, at least if you were using Unreal Engine for this, is using this thing called Live Link and connecting it to your mocap, right? There is a couple tutorials on that, and I believe Unreal's documentation, as well as Rococo's website, don't quote me on that, has some information on how to set it up for Unreal Engine. But that's just under the impression you're planning on using Unreal for it. I'm not too familiar with setting it up for like outside, for live streaming outside of Unreal. I am familiar with the setup in Unreal. It's quite easy for that. But yeah,
in terms of streaming, I mean, there's a number of different ways of getting imagery out. If you're using mocap in Unreal, you can do anything from streaming through a plugin out directly to a streaming channel, to even just using OBS and doing a screen share of your viewport. There's a whole plethora of different ways of actually getting it on the stream. But if you're looking for any I guess any advice on top of that, send us another question in the chat if we're still here. We'll do our best to answer it, but hopefully that gave you a couple of tips there. So anything else we're seeing here? People asking about different types of mocap suits, and there's all sorts of different ones out there, different prices, different qualities. I have good things to say about all of them. They have different prices, and I think one of the with good friends at Rococo, and I like the Perception Neuron suit. They're sort of on a rough, even pegging these days. Move AI are doing some really interesting stuff with, and in fact, Rococo now have a video-based solution as well. But Move AI, we saw at NAB, Move AI do a real-time mocap with cameras. I mean, that's kind of the first time that's really been a thing, to actually get the mocap. There's a little bit of latency there, but essentially being able to get real-time mocap using optical methods, and it looks very good. The world of mocap is changing significantly, and I think looking at the right kind of price points with if you're live streaming and doing mocap, I believe that the Move AI solution's a bit expensive and maybe not even available to the public just yet. But check that out. And probably more likely at the moment, you'd still be using for live real-time streaming of mocap a suit of some sort. Rococo and Perception Neuron are roughly even pricing. Extends is more expensive, but very good quality. Somebody's asking a question here saying, do you cover anything on character animation and rigging in Unreal? Yes, we do, as much as Unreal can do. We don't go in depth into how to control rig, how to build a control rig, because it's fairly complex. We do have character classes that specialize in that, but we do cover how to bring in characters, how to apply motion to them, how to retarget motion that's meant for one character, but being able to use that motion on another character. We anyone else want to add anything to that? We cover quite a lot about characters, being able to build a character animation driven piece. Franco, I know that you're this is one of your weeks. So character rigging is not, we don't cover like outside how to apply, because Maya Unreal is not ready for actually skin weight painting and that stage of rigging. But
Not yet. So we don't do control rig here regarding the creation of it. We use control rig. We teach you how to use and how to animate with control rig. Obviously, that applies for both Mani or Queenie, which are the mannequins in Unreal Engine, the default characters, or metahumans, which are free to use and come through Quixel Bridge. Character animation goes through manual keyframe animation if you're insane enough. How to bring in custom animation from an outside DCC, although we try and lean away from that. We try and have you guys run into the actual engine, any animation that you want to do. And we mostly reinforce the use of retargeted animations, which is a process of telling skeleton A to use skeleton B's animations through the process, which is called retargeting, which essentially connects bones from one skeleton to the other. And the engine is smart enough to know that where bone A moves in this rotation in skeleton A, bone B will follow if the retargeting is done correctly, which is great because that lets you use pretty much almost any animation on any character and send it to another one, as long as the retargeting is done correctly. This applies to 99% of the animations that you find in the marketplace, because those are made for the what's known as the UE mannequin skeleton, which is like the standard nomenclature and naming convention for bones. And if you go outside marketplace, which is like Unreal's or Epic's own asset marketplace, we suggest Mixamo, which is free and has a ton of animations that apply to Unreal with this retargeting process. Anything outside those two can be done too, with a little bit of work into it.
Awesome. Thank you, Franco. Yeah, there's quite a lot of depth. Building control rigs is a beast, and we do cover that in another class, which is focused on characters. We have a whole 6-week course advanced course just dedicated to characters. And it's a significant part of that because it's a big part of the operation. You can kind of see where Unreal's going as well, with skin weight painting being in its future and being able to close the loop at some point, just not right now. Still rigging is done, at least the weight painting is done outside, and you bring it in, you can apply a control rig, and there's lots of great tools once you get in there. People asking questions here about is the deposit made at the time of sign up? Yes, it is, but we do have a couple of payment plans where you can do multiple payments, and you just have to pay the first one to jump in on the course. And we're always looking at improving that as we go. But yes, hopefully that answered that question. After someone saying, after I'm done with the 8-week course, are there additional consultations I can purchase to help me learn how to sell my services as a Moses Star Tracker renter? So there are coaching hours that you can add to the program. There's a lot of support during the class, but that you can buy additional one-to-one sessions. What you get in the class is a live class where you can ask questions, a live lab at the end of that class, and a lab midweek as well, which are all group sessions, and they're great because you get to see other people breaking their stuff and how it gets fixed. That's a really, really useful part of it, being group based. But it is possible to buy additional sessions, and people do that regularly. There is a VIP option, in which case you can get high level support. There is additional coaching hours that you can buy with the instructors as well. So there's multiple different ways you can do that. As for selling your services as a Moses Star Tracker professional, we don't train specifically in the Moses system because we teach across the spectrum of tracking systems. We don't represent any one of them individually, but we do teach virtual camera in the Unreal for Filmmakers program. Even in the first one, we go through how tracking systems work. We talk about them all. We show how to build one. If you have an iPad lying around, which I used to, but my children have stolen them all, so I have to bring them out, and they're usually covered in jam. Use an iPad. You can make a great virtual camera with an iPad. Just a free app on the iPad. So if you've got an iPad lying around or an iPhone, make a virtual camera. You can use the Vive system, which we also talk through, and using Live Link to get that data into Unreal, which is its kind of outside Unreal to inside connection system, the Live Link system. Hopefully that helped. Somebody else saying, thanks for sharing the great knowledge. You're welcome. Aside from creating these incredible environments in Unreal, are there any special effects that can be added to scenes? Certainly, yeah. What we recommend for beginners is to leverage Niagara systems that have been made by others and try and reverse engineer them and adjust them to your purposes. Doing visual effects from scratch has always been fiddly and tricky. It's something that can take a while to get good at. So we don't teach how to build Niagara systems from the bottom up, but we'll certainly support you as best we can, dabbling with others. There's tons of them on the marketplace. I most of the time when I'm putting effects into a system, usually going and grabbing one that's made already and then adjusting it because it's just a better jumping off point. But yeah, there's tons of things that you can add in, from atmosphere to dust storms to lots of really cool stuff coming in from Embergen, being able to create real-time volumetric effects and bring those in. Don't know if you guys have got anything to add to that.
Yeah, definitely follow that advice with using pre-made stuff. The part of the reason why is because a lot of the stuff out there, like say YouTube tutorials, are more like they're not going to show you how to do it. So if something goes wrong, you're on your own, as an example, right? So be very careful with those. And things like Ed said, Embergen is great. but there are caveats to it, so use them at your own peril. Okay, ignoring that
Peril.
word, but
Peril.
just be careful because it could end up causing a lot of heartburn for you, especially if it's your first time doing it. Like, that's not to say don't do it. You can, just be aware. And yeah, definitely go in. I recommend on your own time going in and trying to learn at least basic Niagara at like after the course, because the thing is that it's an extremely complex system that can go from making, say, dust poofs for footsteps to making gravitational poles for a black hole. Like, you could literally do these things, or even have rodents reacting to light, as an example, or even entire armies inside of Niagara. And that's how in depth it can go. And so just be careful, like, if also at deciding to use complex Niagara systems, something goes wrong.
It's sucked into a black hole.
Yeah,
before you know it.
Exactly.
Literally and metaphorically. Good answer. Thank you, Daniel. Somebody, again, the point coming back about tracking systems and Mosys. And they're a great tracking system. I love Mosys and Stipe. They're both really, really good high-end 50 grand solutions for tracking, not the mainstay of the indie filmmaker always. But something in addition to that, I would definitely point out is as well as the Vive game controller solution, where we were using these things to puppeteer virtual cameras using controllers and trackers, which we used on the Lion King as the camera tracking solution. Many people probably don't know that. In addition to that, the Vive HTC have made the Vive Mars, which is a great tracking solution that's 10 times cheaper, that's really good, and it has gen lock and time code. So if you're in the LED volume space and you want that synchronization, it's great tracking, and it also has those features. And they just announced at NEB it's so new, I've forgotten the name, but basically the lens encoders. So you can now also plug these couple of extra devices onto your camera lens, and it will tell you the focus distance and be able to get lens data back through the Mars system and into the Unreal Engine. So you can synchronize your depth of field and your focal length and aperture. So be able to bring those back into the which was kind of the missing part of that solution. But that all in is 5,000 plus whatever it is for those little lens encoders. So it's a great solution. It does have a size limitation of about 10 meters squared, but that's fairly big, for a lot of use cases. It's really good. So I highly recommend them. Mr. B, hello. Sorry, it's a friend of mine. Teaches my children music. Is a genius. Do we have any more questions? Oh, someone's saying, how many students are there per class? It varies a little bit, but usually somewhere around 15 to 20 students per class. I think we had 20 in our last one. The really great part of it being a group class, as I said, is people really, you get 3 instructors, 3 or 4 guests from the industry. So you've got tons of mentoring from people who really know what they're doing. But also there's some of the people that show up to these classes are just extraordinary. They've been doing some parts of what we do longer than we have often. They just need the Unreal part. And some of those people are just an amazing resource, and you get to learn from them too. One of our first ever students, his company did a bunch of the Matrix movie and had been in the visual effects industry for 40 years. I had a tremendous amount to learn from him. Even the instructors had a lot to learn. So I think a really a great resource is the group and the community that you become a part of by joining this course. So yeah, round 20, we've had more, less. Actually, less isn't as good. More, too many more, and it gets harder to support. Although if it does get bigger, we add more stuff. So we try and keep it around that number. Hopefully that helped. So an update saying, thanks for sharing the new release. The lens gear encoders of half the reason why I chose to do most of this. Right, yeah, that makes sense. They just didn't have that part, and they've now plugged that in, which is really cool. It just keeps it being really, really affordable, and it's a great system. We've used it. Any more questions? I feel like we got most of them. Yeah. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure this evening, being able to share this time with you all. Thanks very much to everybody for coming and joining us tonight. If you're interested in the class that we're talking about, you can sign up at becomecgpro.com. Go to the courses page, the film section, and there's the Unreal for Filmmakers class right there. You can sign up right there. If you do want to talk to us about it, please do feel free to sign up for a call. It's a real call with a real person. So look forward to speaking with you if you sign up for a call. But if you want to go ahead and sign up, make sure you secure that space for next round, then jump on in, and it will be a total pleasure to meet you and get to work with you. Guys, Franco, Daniel, thank you so much for spending your evening with us as well. Always love hanging out with you both.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting us on. Yeah.
You bet. All right. Well, I think it is time to say goodbye. Thank you once again to everybody. Thanks to the team in the background. Thanks to Jackie and Jameson. Appreciate you guys supporting in the background and answering questions. And yeah, hope to see you all again soon on one of these. We've been CG Pro, and whatever you do, make cool stuff. This is an amazing time. We've never had more access to tools and techniques, especially being as affordable as it is now. Unreal Engine is free. When I started in computer graphics, we were still using SGI machines that cost $100,000, $200,000, and Maya was $40,000. So most people couldn't even touch computer graphics at that point. Now, essentially anyone has got access, so there's no excuses. Go make cool things. Look forward to seeing it. Post it, share it with us. We'd love to see it. Thank you all. We'll see you again soon.